Now, in episode 3, Geralt was able to get rid of the Bard, and the Bard did his job. He's going around spreading the legend of Geralt of Rivia. And it has reached all the way to a bar/brothel where after Geralt sleeps with one of the girls, he finds out that he's kind of a legend, and it's all because of the Barb. But during Pillow Talk, she makes mention how he's not the first Witcher there. There was a Witcher a couple weeks back because a kingdom close by called Temeria has been dealing with some kind of monster, and the Witcher showed up, took their money, and apparently ran. So he has the horse stay with the barkeep and then heads off to Temeria to see if he can be of service. But when he gets there, the townspeople are having a little meeting, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And one of them mentions how Nilfgaard overthrew their king, so why don't we just do that? He's clearly not getting the job done. And Geralt, who is over in the corner, finally pipes up and says, "Oh, that's genius. So you can't kill this monster, so you're going to kill the king? I mean, how can that not work?" And they don't really want to hear from the Witcher because his kind just stole all their money and ran off. But he tells them that, unlike that guy, he takes payment after the job is done, and he does it for about a third of the price. Either way, they don't really get into negotiating because the king's men show up to break up the uprising. And one of the guys is the king's confidant, Ostrit. He tells them, "If you guys just disperse, I'm not going to tell the king about this, just go your separate ways." The interaction does get pretty heated, but all the townspeople do end up leaving. Afterwards, Ostrit tells Geralt, "I'm going to have my king's men escort you out of town. We don't want to see your kind here." But as he's being escorted out of town, all of a sudden, the king's men just collapse off their horses, and a sorceress appears out of the woods. And Geralt says, "Oh, this is genius. So the king is going to make a big public spectacle about kicking me out of town, but then he's going to have you pay me to take care of the monster." And she says, "No, actually, this isn't his idea. It's my idea, and I'm going to pay you with my coin. But I don't want you to kill the monster. I want you to keep the monster alive." She walks him back into the city and explains how 6 years ago, stable hands just started vanishing from the castle above the city. Not long after, stable hands turned into citizens of Temeria, and not long after that, King Foltest' men realized that something was coming from the crypt, some kind of beast. And that's where the king's sister Ada was buried. And there's always been a rumor that she had an affair with somebody in town. And when Geralt hears that, he asks, "Was she pregnant?" Because there's always this myth about a woman who dies when she's pregnant, a werewolf, and all this bad shit happens. And the sorceress, who's named Marigold, by the way, says, "I don't know, but if she was, that would be the heir to the throne because King Foltest never married and never had kids." The king then fled the castle, and after Nilfgaard had their king overthrown, the Brotherhood couldn't risk having the same thing happen to Temeria, so they sent Marigold there about 3 months ago to figure out what's going on. And she wants to cure the creature, but Geralt, who thinks it's something called a Vukalat, says Vukalats can't be cured. And she says, "Yeah, that's the thing though, it's not a Vukalat." She then takes him down to the morgue where they're storing the bodies of all those who died at this creature's hand, and she wants him to guess what kind of creature this could possibly be. But one of those dead bodies is the Witcher. And when Geralt sees the body, he's so insulted that they ran with this story that the Witcher just took their money and ran instead of just admitting that the Witcher was killed, because it makes his kind look bad. After voicing that displeasure, he starts rummaging around the insides of the Witcher and finds out that the liver and the heart are missing. And there's only one kind of beast that is that picky of an eater, and it's something called a Striga. And Strigas are female, which means that not only was Ada pregnant, she was pregnant with a baby girl. So Marigold takes Geralt to the king, where he's explaining the whole Striga thing and what could have possibly happened. And a few of the king's men are getting up in arms about this because he's dare not referring to this creature as the princess, because technically it is the princess, even though they just all found out about that. But when Geralt brings up the possible father/Ada having an affair, King Foltest says everybody out. So everybody gets up to leave, but Geralt's the last one, and he locks everybody out of the room and then goes back to talk to Foltest. And he wants to know who the dad is because he's pretty certain that Foltest knows. Foltest never batted an eye when Geralt brought up his sister being cursed, his sister being murdered. The only time he got a reaction out of him was when he brought up the father. It also doesn't look good for Foltest the fact that he never married, he never had any kids. The whole time Geralt is implying that Foltest is the father. It doesn't take long for Foltest's men to break down the door and get in, but Foltest has them stand down and says, "How dare you accuse me of sleeping with my own sister? Get out of this town and never come back." But he doesn't really leave town. He's perched outside of the abandoned castle trying to figure out a way in, and Marigold shows up and is willing to help out because she knows that the best chance to cure this Striga is Geralt. So they create a diversion to get rid of the guards, and then they enter the castle. And Marigold is just speaking aloud saying, "Jesus, what happened to Ada and Foltest?" And that's when Geralt says, "I think Foltest is the father." She asks, "Do you think it's possible that Foltest had cursed his sister?" He says, maybe. They make their way into her bedroom and they start snooping around, investigating certain things. And Marigold finds a bunch of letters that were sent from their mother to Foltest and Ada, denouncing their relationship, proving that the two were having an affair. So with this evidence, they bring it to the family advisor, Ostrit. And in the letters, it clearly states that their mother was against the affair, and Ada had repeatedly said that she wasn't willing to end it. Now, the mother wasn't involved in any kind of sorcery, so you can cross her off the list of people who could have cursed Ada. Geralt then asks Ostrit what his relationship to Ada was, and he says, kind of a confidant, a protector, if you will. He says, all right, well, if you were a confidant, did she ever mention anything about her brother? And he says, not like this. Marigold pipes in and says she was ashamed, and Ostrit says, or she was frightened. I mean, what if this relationship wasn't totally consensual? Geralt says, so you think that he raped her, got her pregnant, and then cursed her to cover it up? Ostrit says, well, kings have done more than that for less. He says, that is true, but there's one problem with that theory. And Geralt gets really close to him and says, I smelled the sheets in the bedroom. I know what you did. Now, at first, Ostrit denies any wrongdoing whatsoever, but eventually he comes clean that he had cursed Ada because he was so jealous that Foltris had got her. And he was pissed off at Foltris for turning Ada against him. He was in love with Ada, so he wanted to punish Foltris. And they tell him, well, you have to tell us how to get rid of the curse. And he's not willing to do that because he wants the Striga to continue to kill people so that it turns the entire town against King Foltris. And he can't even see how much damage he has done by killing the woman he loved, by ruining her unborn child, and by killing innocent townsfolk. Later on that night, Geralt encounters a bunch of the king's men, and he thinks he's going to have to throw down, but the king appears and says, Marigold told me I can trust you. He then asks his plan and says, do you think you can still save my daughter? And this is the first time he's admitting that, yes, he was the father. Geralt says, well, this isn't the first time I've gone up against a princess that many think is a beast. And King Foltris thinks, this is great. What happened to her? Well, yeah, she died. But Geralt reassures him that he will try to keep the princess alive at all costs. He then heads into the abandoned castle where he has Ostrit chained up, beaten up, because he's trying to figure out how to lift this curse. And Ostrit is playing hardball at first, but succumbs to the pressure and says, look, man, I don't know. There was someone who was in bad standing with the Brotherhood. They showed up on a full moon. They told me to sacrifice a goat, bathe in their own blood, wait for a rooster, and just say a spell. He says, all right, well, what was the spell? And Ostrit tells him it was something in elf tongue. And when Geralt hears that, he's pissed because he just realized that he's going to have to fight this thing until dawn. And fighting and keeping both of them alive until dawn is going to be really difficult to do. So he takes a medieval 5-hour energy that gives him a certain power. He goes down and starts fighting the Striga, and he's putting up a really good fight until he goes to take another one of those 5-hour energies and realizes that the bottle broke. And he's quickly running out of his power. He's been able to trap the Striga indoors, but Striga's doing a number on him. Luckily for Geralt, dawn does arrive and the Striga goes to run into the crypt where it lives during the day, but Geralt is able to bump it off and lock himself in the crypt, keeping the Striga out, having to deal with the sunlight. And that lifts the curse. When Geralt comes out, he sees the girl all covered in blood and goes to console her, but she stabs him in the jugular, he bites her, and Geralt is in really, really rough shape. Luckily for him, though, Marigold has found him and patched him up, but all Geralt is concerned about is getting back to his horse. Now, it's worth mentioning that the princess is also healing up as well, and he does ask how she's doing. Marigold then asks, who's Renfri? That was the only name that you were saying in your sleep, but Geralt is unwilling to tell her anything about Renfri. He just wants to get his payment. And in his bag of money, he has the brooch that looks a lot like Renfri's brooch. Marigold then mentions, I feel like there's more to your life than monsters and money. I can just sense it. And she might be referring to Ciri, who is woken up in the woods and compelled to walk forward by this voice that's calling to her. Now, Dara wakes up shortly after that and realizes what's happening and goes to chase after her, but then all of a sudden an arrow shoots out at him. And he looks around and there are a bunch of skeletons all filled up with arrows. So he's in a dangerous predicament, but he continues to run forward, and it doesn't take long for him to get hit by one of those arrows. So he gets really close to her, but isn't able to actually reach her, and Ciri continues to walk forward into this forest. Now, Yennefer has completed her training and is continuing her relationship with Istredd. The two are steady fucking. And with her power, she's even doing it in front of a crowd of elves. Albeit, they're fake. But the two seem to be in a really good spot, and they're both talking about their future assignments of where they're headed, and how eventually one day they want to be together and how that they can make that happen. She then goes to meet with the medieval plastic surgeon, and just like a plastic surgeon, he is talking up his abilities. He can make the ugliest people beautiful, no matter how tough the clay. And this is all in preparation for the party that they're going to have after their graduation ceremony, where they meet the kings of the kingdoms that they're going to be assigned to. And she's got all these dresses around her, and she's really excited until she looks in the mirror. Tissaia then comes in and realizes that even with all these dresses, when Yennefer looks in the mirror, she lacks any self-confidence, so she tries to give her a pep talk. She tells her to just leave that girl in the mirror. Tissaia then goes to meet with the Brotherhood of Sorcery, and they're discussing where they're sending all of these girls, one of whom is the niece of the head of the council. And Yennefer is supposed to go to a city called Adoran, and it's a really good fit for her. But Stregobor thinks that she'd be better suited at Nilfgaard. And he goes so low to mention how she has elven blood, and Aderin and elves do not get along. So if Aderin found out that she was quarter elf, wouldn't end well. And there's not much to say it can even do about it. I mean, the cat's out of the bag. So the council votes that she will be heading to Nilfgaard and not Aderin. Of course, when Yennefer finds out about this, she's pissed. She storms into Tissaya's office and demands to meet with the council. Tissaya's like, you're not meeting with the council. I do that. I'm the one who chose this. And Yennefer says, no, I don't think so. I think what happened was the council overruled you. And that's when Tissaia comes clean that it has to do with the fact she's quarter elf. And Yennefer feels betrayed that she revealed that to the council. She says, I didn't reveal that to the council. And at that moment, Yennefer knows exactly who's been talking about her, and it's been Istrid. So she goes and breaks up with him. The two accuse each other of spying on each other for their sorcerers. Yennefer tells him that the plans that he thinks he was having were all put there by her. God, you just hate to see love break up. But Yennefer is pissed. She's also sick of looking like the way she is. So she skips her graduation and walks into the plastic surgeon and says, all right, time to fix me. But the problem is she was supposed to be fixed by graduation. So he says, no, I can't do that. The council will have my head. She says, well, do they have your cock as well? And no guy can take that insult. So he says, all right, fine, I'll do it. He wants to put her under, but she says, no time. I'll do it while I'm awake. He tries to talk her out of that because it's a painful process, but she insists. And it is a very painful process, but he is able to make her beautiful. And when she walks into that party, it is a bad bitch alert. I mean, that spine is looking fine. Everybody in the party stops and looks at her, including Princess Ada and Prince Foltris as kids. And this is the first time we're learning that these storylines are not playing out at the same time. She then walks over to the Prince of Aedirn, who is infatuated with her because she is gorgeous, and he wasn't really feeling the girl that was assigned to him in the first place, and it seems like Yennefer has gotten her way. She's not heading to Nilfgaard after all, at the behest of the king, and she will be heading to the city she wanted to the entire time. And the Brotherhood can only stand back and watch it go down, pissed off because they just got outsmarted. Thank you for watching this recap. If you do not see the next one up in the corner right there on the end screen, don't worry, it'll be up shortly. Please consider following the channel. That'd be cool. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't, there's a thumbs down button for a reason.